ngā kōti e whakahe. Kawana, ka whakamanu whiriti a koe au. Kamate, kamate,
The health immigration is a divisive issue. It divides you. It doesn't pull you together. It's a weakening process. You understand what I'm saying, bro?
Mhm.
It weakens you. If I put a cup of coffee right now in front of you and pour cream in it, do I make it stronger?
Hell no, you make it weaker.
That's right. So black folk went for social integration.
I've always asked, has integration helped to harm the black community? I think it harmed.
Knocked the black folks' brains out. I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And we were looking for this social integration. You know why? Because we had our own businesses there. We had our own businesses. My family was a part of one that had the only black bus line in the entire United States. The only black bus line. And I said we had a bus line. I'm not talking about 2 or 3 buses. We had over 500 buses.
Wow.
In Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And guess what? We had that from 1927 up to about 1967. In Winston-Salem, we also had our own cab companies. Social integration is a divisive issue. It divides you. It doesn't pull you together. It's a weakening process. You understand what I'm saying, bro?
Mhm.
It weakens you. If I put a cup of coffee right now in front of you and pour cream in it, do I make it stronger?
Hell no, you make it weaker.
That's right. So black folk went for social integration.
I've always asked, has integration helped to harm the black community? I think it harmed.
Knocked the black folks' brains out. I grew up in Winston.
Welcome to Let It Be Known. And that first video you saw, that was actually a parliament meeting, like a U.S. Congress type meeting. And these are government officials meeting. And that was their protest, the one-party protest, when that female lawmaker started this whole chant and dance, and they all joined in. Neat stuff like that. Could you? I was tweeting. I tweeted at not tweeted, but blue skied at AOC and Jasmine Crockett, saying that you two probably the only two have the nerve, the guts to do something like that. And I think they probably are. You know, RNG starts off this morning by mentioning something that it's really serious. He always mentioning something that's crazy, but he mentions the Trump's choice for the Secretary of Defense is a white nationalist, and yeah, David, this is where I'm going to. He says, David Youngblood says, I've come to the sad realization we have no allies. We're in this fight all alone. And you realize when you have an accused sexual predator in Matt Gaetz as your attorney general pick, and a Fox News host, and another cabinet post, and Elon Musk overseeing the reformation of government. Folks, this is real stuff. It's real. It's unserious. It is a complete signal. If you had any doubts, and we said we and we are going to mostly try and stay away from the whole Trumpism stuff and the negative part of it. But if you had any doubts, when that man told you a long time ago that he was going to be dictator on day one, and then he puts folks in place, Robert F. Kennedy, people are having issues and cows over him overseeing the FDA because of his track record. Um, and I am I've I've texted with him. He's texted with me. I'm trying to get him on the program um, because we need some serious discussions. Even with them, some internal serious discussions. I was proud to see, and by some measure, many publishers of the NMPA get together yesterday. Hopefully that continues, and hopefully it becomes even a lot more productive. Proud to see that. I kind of hope that more folks who head or lead organizations, if they haven't spoken to their employees or their colleagues or whatever yet, I hope it's done. Um, I'm just gonna be blunt. It hasn't been done here. It hasn't been done here, and it still hasn't been done here. And I think that that's uh, it's an abdication of leadership responsibilities because we are, as I said to Bobby Henry, the chair of the NMPA, this is a Martin Luther King was shot moment. This is a 9/11 moment. Yeah, I'm perturbed, very much perturbed. Don't like where things are headed, and y'all can sit around and shuck and jive all y'all want. Livelihoods are at stake. I have a family. Other folks have families. Y'all want to play around? We gotta toe the line because you want to mess up. You want to cover up. It's not good. It's not cool. We've had your back, have ours. Um, it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. And everybody who has abdicated their leadership, they deserve to hear it. I don't care who you are. Some of them we love you, but hey, family got to call family out. I mean, it's just we are. This is Jim Crow knocking on the door. And put it more in black terms, Jim Crow knocking on the door. And y'all want to sit aside and let folks. When you got my back, you can best believe I am going on the front lines for you. But these are moments. These are moments where you know specifically who's in your corner, who's in that foxhole with you. And unfortunately, many of us are finding out that it's a fight. It's a fight that we have to do ourselves. We gotta persevere somehow. Harriet Tubman didn't take everybody because everybody didn't want to go. And you know what? There are those who, in good times, they set themselves up on high. They were this, they are that, they are blah. They throw their resume at you, and and folks bow down to the resume. And just like resumes, paper resumes, that's gone with the wind. That's the past. We need to know who is standing up today, 7:44 a.m., 11/15, 2024. Who's standing up at this moment? There's been too much quiet going on in our world. Too much quiet. Um, I'm scouring real estate overseas. And the more this guy makes his picks, I mean, you got people talking about, oh, are we going to be able to do business with them or whatever? Hey, let's get real about stuff for a change. Let's get real. People can't make up their mind on simple stuff. Surveys. Let's go after folks. Hey, knock on doors. Hey, are you with me or are you against me? It's like, folks, it's no time. We should have been planning years ago for this. We should have been planning the moment that guy first became a threat 10 years ago. And then we had a trial run for 4 years. We had a trial run. And everybody just watched and laughed and shucked and jived. The ones that wasn't paying attention, the ones that didn't have your back, they wasn't stacking the paper as it were and getting prepared for this. Everything was fast and loose. And now we're here. And now we are you. Where are you? Folks' livelihoods and lives and that of their small children. Oh, we all for Black lives until it's time to be for Black lives. As of right now, there are, with all the cabinets positions being filled, there's still a couple of jobs left, like butler, there, like chef or something like that, housekeeper. Byron Donalds and Tim Scott might grab one of those jobs. I mean, we've been looking to see with all of their silliness, just to put it mildly, with all their timing, just to put it mildly, not a black face, not a spade in the deck in that administration. Where are you at? Where's your job, Byron Donalds? Where's your black job, Tim Scott? Look at that. And I mean, that we've gone constantly to the Biden-Harris White House over the past 4 years. And you cannot walk through from Secret Service to cabinet people to administrative people to just employees. You can't go 2 steps in the White House today without seeing a black face. There's so many black folks in the White House. I mean, they should have changed the name these last 4 years. They should have just taken white off there. And so, I mean, some good looking black faces too. That, I mean, Biden had a type. He had a type. Y'all can say what y'all want about the old man, but he had a type. And then you gonna throw out not that it wasn't expected that anybody in this administration in the cabinets would be replaced, but you got a 5-star general with all these credentials heading the Department of Defense right now. But his problem is he's black. So he's out. And they're putting in somebody who don't want black people, or who might just think that the only thing good about black people is he can put them on the front lines if there's a war. But I mean, these people, little Marco, man, dished your wife. You and Ted Cruz. Where's Ted Cruz? I mean, come on. Uh, these people, it's a joke. He's talking about make America great again. He's made America a clown show. It's so bad. It is so bad that I got a jury duty summons in the mail yesterday. I'm gonna tell you right now, if it's a black person, and it's a criminal trial too. If it's a black person, as long as it's not a black on black crime, you walking, homie. I'm not convicting you. I'm sorry. I'm not sending no black person to jail under these conditions. Now, if y'all watching, y'all might they're probably gonna disqualify me. But brother, if it was a crime against a non-black person, you all right. Make sure your lawyer say, I want him on the jury. You're not going to jail. Not in this. No, we can't do that. Can't do that. Oh, but he robbed the store. He was hungry. He assaulted them. He is self-defense. Don't come at. Y'all got the wrong one. Where my jury summons? My jury summons, right? Talking about summon right here. The father, my jury summons right here. Right here. Are y'all kidding me? You ain't going, brother. You all right. You all right. You okay. Shucks. You are good. Orange said, I told y'all I stay on that turn of time. I mean, y'all, there will be no Christian Clark in the Trump administration. Absolutely not. There won't even be the word civil rights will only apply. And Trump has said it himself. This is not hyperbole. This is not anything else. He has said it himself. Only applies to white men who feel discriminated. And so let's look at that. And then the Department of Education. He's shutting it down, he says. Many folks may not know, but Department of Education began under the Carter administration way back in 1979. Reagan tried to dismantle the Department of Education as well, but failed to get the support he needed for that. So the Department of Education has so many critical functions, especially for Black and minorities. And so things like the Pell Grant, they're going to go away. Title I programs, they spend $18.4 billion in Title I programs, which provides funding, supplemental funding to high poverty K-12 schools, by the way. They spend $15.5 billion for programs that help cover the cost of education for students with disabilities. See, stuff like that, when you got Trump and his minions saying that that's useless spending, you're talking about students with disabilities. You're talking about students in poverty as well. And so that's what they want to get rid of. That's what Reagan wanted to get rid of. And it was Republicans actually in Congress who said to Reagan, "Hey, wait a minute. This is gonna hurt some of our people." And Reagan finally backed off, but Reagan also did not have the immense authoritarian type authority that Trump will now enjoy. So we're going to see what happens. In a bit, we can finally have that conversation. We're going to be joined in studio. We talking about multiple myeloma, a rare cancer that affects mostly African American men. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Just wanted as a note, something that really sad thing happened in our family, the Black Press family. One of our favorites, Rashonda Tate, she lost her father in a senseless act of violence. Her 78-year-old Bruce Tate in North Little Rock was killed on October the 30th. Shonda's sibling Courtney says, when he passed, he should have been surrounded by his loved ones. We should have had an opportunity to say goodbye. He's a victim of a homicide that happened on West 14th Street. The Arkansas Stop the Violence movement held a press conference. They want to find out who did it. They want to help bring justice to Rashonda and her family. You guys have seen Rashonda on this program a number of times. She is with the Houston Defender, and not only that, um, she is a celebrated and accomplished author. We have been promoting her latest book, The Queen of Sugar Hill, on this program with her. North Little Rock police said that her father's body was found in the 2000 block of West 14th Street, and they have no leads right now. They have no leads whatsoever, and they are really, really hoping that the community will come together and help find out who committed this senseless act. Rashonda says that her father, she was talking to a local news channel. She says, my father has survived brain operations. He survived falling off roofs. He survived all kinds of illnesses. And then to lose his life like this, that's what we're struggling with. The family said in a joint statement that their father was a man who continuously showed up for others, and now they are hoping he gets that in return. Um, Courtney says that if there's anyone out there that knows anything, we beg and we pray that you do the right thing and contact the authorities. Folks, anyone with information is asked to call the police department tip line at 501 680 8391 or detectives at 501-975-8771. 501-975-8771. Folks, this is where that whole no snitch rule just really goes out the window, right? You got to say something. This was a innocent family man. His family loves and misses him. As she said, all these other falling off roofs and things like that, they could accept. This, they cannot. And you understand why they cannot accept this. This is just senseless. It's horrible. And help the Tate family, folks, if you can. Well, nearly 40 years after making his professional debut and 19 years after being battered into retirement, a 58-year-old Iron Mike Tyson will climb back into the ring tonight, for a Netflix-backed bout that has drawn widespread condemnation across the boxing world because Tyson is a grandfather. Tyson, who terrorized the heavyweight division during his reign in the late 80s, is lacing up the gloves to face YouTuber Jake Paul, who is 27 years old. Tyson's 58. And this is going to be at AT&T Stadium. 100,000 people almost will be packing the stadium in Arlington, Texas. They're going to fight. The rules on this fight will be 8 2-minute rounds. Now, in a normal heavyweight bout, it's 3-minute rounds and 12 rounds, but they are cutting it to 8 rounds and just 2 minutes per round. It was supposed to take place back in July, but it was postponed after Mike got some medical treatment on a flight from Miami to Los Angeles after um, getting sick. He had a bleeding ulcer. And so folks said, listen, this should not happen. And yesterday at the weigh-in, apparently Jake Paul stepped on Tyson's foot, and Tyson he did a Will Smith, Chris Rock type thing. Smack the taste out of his mouth, as you see in the picture there. David Youngblood says, I've got Tyson making mincemeat out of that guy. But many say that this is an unacceptable risk. Now, one estimate says that Tyson will be paid $20 million. There are others who said he might be paid. Other estimates that he might make up to $100 million on this fight. The good thing for Tyson is that there's no Don King to siphon off the purse there, as he has accused the great boxing promoter the famed boxing promoter, of doing so throughout his career. And Tyson says he's ready for Jake Paul. And really, the only thing to root for here is that um, Tyson, uh, at his age, does not get seriously injured, um, and that he's able to at least spend some of that millions that he's going to make tonight healthy. But this is happening. Netflix is going to have it, and the buys on this is said to be absolutely tremendous. So um, I guess we'll bring you the results, so you'll know the results after tonight. But we'll talk about it later. But hopefully, one thing I hope doesn't happen here, because Tyson has to understand Jake Paul is not a trained fighter, right? So if Tyson does annihilate this guy, that it doesn't give him any ideas of continue continuing to fight. And Mike B says, I don't care if Tyson is 80. If he hits, you're going to feel it for a long time. ORG says, I'm not watching that crap. Yeah. Like I said, hopefully that's it. But you remember, like George Foreman, he fought for a long time. I mean, he came back in his 40s, and he and he was making. Listen, he was pounding folks in his 40s, mid 40s, and so hey, but Tyson is almost 60 years old. This is, I don't know how they got this sanctioned. Somebody got some money. Somebody got some money. Folks, eh, today we are joined by Kimberly Alexander, a resilient advocate whose life was profoundly shaped by an unexpected battle with multiple myeloma, a rare and aggressive blood cancer. Her late husband, former NFL player Elijah Alexander, was diagnosed at just 34 years old. It showed that there is still this startling health disparity in the process. Black individuals are twice as likely to face this diagnosis, and young Black men are at particularly high risk. Since Elijah's passing, Kimberly has channeled her experience and strength into action through her healthcare communications company and her That's My Word campaign. Kimberly has dedicated to raising awareness, encouraging conversations about family health history, and empowering communities to advocate for equitable health care. Kimberly is with us. Kimberly Alexander is with us this morning. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us. Uh, this is quite a mission that you're on, and we really thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you start by telling us about Elijah's journey with multiple myeloma and the early signs that led to his diagnosis?
Well, it was interesting. A couple of years after Elijah retired from the Oakland Raiders, he started complaining about having pain in his feet. And so he was going to lots of local doctors trying to get some kind of clarification as to why he was hurting. And to be very honest with you, he literally only described it as his feet were hurting. And so I
Hmm.
don't know. I know I didn't really understand the magnitude of it. It was actually during a trip to Costa Rica where he got sick on the plane, and his friend who was with him called the physician into the hotel room once they landed, and that doctor did the blood work that ended up finding that something was very, very wrong with him and suggested he get back to the United States and see a physician here. So it was shocking because all of the doctors here wrote it off as being pain in his feet because he'd been playing football for so long.
Hmm. And so the only symptoms at that point that presented, and so these doctors, as you said, and you can almost understand. Okay, he's a football player.
Mhm.
It stands to reason that that's why. But um, isn't that a symptom, a known symptom? I mean, could they have said, "Hey, let's take a closer look"?
Well, so I think one of the other issues is Elijah was so young, and back in 2005 when all of this happened, a lot of the literature said that most myeloma patients present at like twice his age, in their 60s and 70s. So nobody expected, a seemingly healthy former NFL linebacker to have an incurable blood cancer. I don't think back then physicians were really looking for those types of symptoms in him. And then also, with my husband having been a linebacker, a position, a job, a profession where you are constantly taught to kind of stifle pain and ignore pain and overlook it or have a high pain tolerance, there could have been several indicators that he just overlooked because he didn't think anything of it.
Yeah. And so you get the blood work.
Hmm.
Um, what happens next?
So everything happened really, really fast, like really fast. And I'm glad it did, because by the time we found out that Elijah had myeloma, he was at the worst stage. He was already in
Mm,
organ failure. And so we were very close to losing him. And so I was appreciative of the emergency room doctor who is the one who ran the test. And to this day, I've always wondered where that man is. I need to find him and honestly thank him, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know where we would have been.
mm.
Him being aware of some of the symptoms is what allowed Elijah to be tested for myeloma in the ER. And because we found out about it, Elijah was able to start treatment pretty much immediately. We had to get his kidneys healthy in order for him to even start the treatment. And all of that just happened like really, really quickly.
And so, helping to navigate this, the whole journey with it. First of all, how long did this journey last for you and Elijah together? And obviously, the journey continues for you as you advocate and speak out about this disease. But walk us through that. What was it like? What was some of the things for people who might just uh, s- be experiencing this, or who might have to experience it in the future?
Hmm. Well, for me, it was I didn't really have a lot of time to react. You know what I mean? Everything happened so quickly. And so, in my thought process was, I need to get my husband healthy. I need to maintain the household for our kids so that our sons have a relatively normal life, all things considered. I was only 32 when he was diagnosed. I really wasn't even familiar with the term
Okay.
caregiver. And so all of that was very new for me. And it's just kind of like fight or flight mode. I absolutely went into fight mode and just wanted to do all I could to keep him around as long as possible. And so Elijah passed in March of 2010. It actually caught us off guard because he had an aneurysm, and that's how I lost him.
Mm.
And so it was very sudden, but ever since then, I mean, I just took the experience and knew that it would be a shame if I didn't share our story, didn't share, how everything impacted in terms of his diagnosis, in terms of how we coped with it, in terms of him being an advocate for himself, in terms of me, just continuing to talk about it and share the story. I mean, even just yesterday, I had a friend who was having lunch with a person he hadn't seen in a while, and that person revealed to him that he'd been diagnosed with myeloma about a year ago. My friend immediately connected us by phone, and we were able to talk, and the man was so excited to have a conversation with someone who knew about myeloma, because it's such a rare disease and you really
Yeah.
don't hear a lot of people in our community talking about it, despite the fact that it impacts us the way that it does.
Yeah, and you mentioned your sons. How have they been able to get through that? I know it's some distance has been put, some
Mhm.
time has have gone by, but I'm sure it stays with all of you. But how did they come through that? How did you help them come through it?
So I'm going to share something that I talk about all the time. When my husband passed away, we were living in Texas. We're in Dallas, Texas. My parents were in Florida, and my parents had been divorced since I was 2 years old. My mom was in St. Petersburg, Florida. My dad was in Gainesville, Florida. My parents both moved into my house. So my mom moved in upstairs, my dad moved in downstairs, and they helped me raise my sons. And at the time, the boys were 11 and 13. They're almost 29 and 26 now. And so the boys have been great, all things considered. I really wanted to make sure that they didn't allow what happened to them by losing their dad to stifle them. I wanted them to know that, I was a safe space for them, that they still had support. Their dad, was still there to support them in spirit. He was their guardian angel. And I'm really proud of them. They've turned out to be great young men.
That is awesome, and I just am in awe of the story you just told. Your parents moved in with you. It takes
Yeah,
a village, and as
it
they
does.
recognize that, and wow, what I can only imagine how that must have really warmed your heart. Uh,
Forever indebted to them. Like I know that it's a blessing, and it's why I don't complain about what happened. It's why I've been able to continue on the way that I have. Elijah's been gone now 14 years, and he started a lot of advocacy work before he passed away, and their assistance really allowed me to pick up where he left off and continue to be a voice for myeloma patients and caregivers.
Yeah, and you've done such a tremendous job, and you've uncovered a lot of information
Mhm.
about multiple myeloma in the Black community, and it's pretty alarming. Can you share more about why this disease disproportionately impacts Black individuals and what we need to know about the risk that the risk factors, I should say?
Well, it's interesting. I think one of the things that's so frustrating about myeloma is the symptoms can be so incredibly benign. They're things that you would dismiss because initially you're not really thinking that it might be a blood cancer. I mean, I think, when you hear the word cancer, it's a broad term. And a lot
Mhm.
of people don't understand how broad it is. And then when you start incorporating the fact that this is a blood cancer and how it can impact your entire body, a lot of people just don't understand. They don't understand that some of the symptoms, like your urine being frothy, it's the protein coming out of your system. If you don't know that that's something to be concerned about, you might not mention it to your doctor. A lot of times myeloma patients end up going to doctors because they're having back pain, they're having bone pain, and unless the doctor tests for it, unless the doctor is already aware of it, it might take a long time before it's ever diagnosed. And that tends to be the one factor that impacts our community more than anyone. I mean, while we can have great outcomes if our myeloma is caught early, quite often it is not. And so it's important for African American patients to have access, to have resources, to be able to go in there and ask all of the right questions and not be, in fear or intimidated by going to a doctor's office. But it really does take an entire team. One of the things that I often tell myeloma patients is to make sure that they take their caregiver with them. I encourage the caretaker to take their phone and record the notes just so that they can, process all of the information that they're getting in order to help their patient improve. There's so many things that you have to consider. You have to start thinking about their immune system. One of the things that I learned about when Elijah was sick was that his immune system was compromised. So if he caught a cold, it would impact him way worse. It can honestly take his life. And we had little
Mm.
kids who were in school and coming home with germs and things like most typical kids do. So I had to make a conscious decision to sometimes keep them separate. Um, we had to change our diet. I was doing anything and everything I could to make sure that he was able to live as long as he could and be healthy and recover from all of the treatment and things that it takes to get through myeloma.
Who- have you in any way come to understand why this affects Black uh, people more than others?
No, they really, that's kind of the frustrating thing about myeloma. There hasn't been a whole lot of information as to why it happens, but it's also one of the reasons why I encourage African Americans to be involved with clinical trials. You know, a lot of the things that are happening now, people are trying to figure out and learn more about the disease and understand the complexities of it in order to improve our outcomes when it comes to how it impacts our community. I mean, with myeloma impacting 20% of the Black community, it's like, how are we not aware of this disease? Why are we not talking about it enough? And sometimes I think that it's a cultural thing. You know, quite often we end up getting sick and we shut down, we don't share. When Elijah got sick, I did pretty much the opposite. I started a blog, and primarily it was because I knew a lot of people were concerned and curious about what was happening because it happened so quickly. I mean, Elijah still looked like he could have played football. So when you see someone who is relatively healthy and large and you think they're fine one day and the next day they're broken down and you're hearing that they have an incurable blood cancer or terminal cancer, it's like, wait a minute, what happened? And so I believe it's important to share the story, and if it gets someone's attention, then that's all that matters to me. It's a passion project at this point.
Yeah, and you mentioned the frothy urine,
Hmm.
at the sore feet. Are there other symptoms that you've come to understand in your work that folks should be on the lookout for?
A lot of times it's interesting. Like I mentioned before, the bone pain. A lot of times myeloma patients will break bones. Their bones will be brittle because the cancer can cause lesions in their bones. And so it's things like that that you just really have to be aware of. But again, you know, you might break a bone and think it's, you know, you just fell down too hard or you fell the wrong way. You might not really think anything of it. And you definitely might not think, oh, well, someone should do blood work on me and see if this is some root issue with something else. So it's frustrating, but I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity to talk about it because hopefully it'll get somebody to think about it and perhaps catch it early.
Yeah, and Daniela Pierre is asking something I was about to ask you too. So it's a great question, I think. Anyway, she says, is testing for myeloma included in the standard metabolic testing, or is it a separate procedure?
It's separate. And I think that's part of the problem. And that's an issue within blood cancers in general. So I think it's important for people. I'm so glad she asked that question, just to be aware of it. That's why we talk about it. I mean, it's interesting. You know, I've been talking about myeloma for 14 years. You know, March is
Hmm.
Myeloma Awareness Month, September is Blood Cancer Awareness Month. And so I tell people all the time, while it is that month during those times, I'm going to talk about it all the time. And one of the things that I've realized has been really beneficial is I might not think people are paying attention to me. You know, you might not have been listening to me in 2008, but in 2023, when your mother is diagnosed with myeloma, you think, oh my goodness, Kim's been talking about this. Let me reach out to her. And so I'm glad they reach out to me. I'm glad they reach out to me instead of Googling information, because at least I can shortcut them to great access and resources so that they can get the proper information on how to deal with myeloma.
Yeah, Mike V wants to know, have you been working with the CDC or NIH on research on this condition?
You know, it's interesting. I haven't been working with them directly, but I did encounter a lot of them and talk to a lot of them when I attended the American Association of Cancer Research convention. It was concerning disparities, which is what we're talking about now. And so I'm really big on educating myself and working with a lot of the different organizations, and even being a part of this whole That's My Word MM campaign is important. I love being able to raise awareness. I love the fact that the celebrities involved are high profile and people pay attention to their voices, and just getting information out there is just critical.
We found too, uh, as far as this disease being hereditary,
Mhm.
is is there a matter of family history? What's the link there?
So it's interesting because that's another reason why I'm absolutely concerned. You know, we have two sons, and as far as I'm concerned, myeloma is now in our genes. And so I need to be aware of all of that. There initially, I was told that there wasn't necessarily a connection, but now they are starting to see that sometimes there is a connection. And so again, that's why it's so important for us to talk about, the diseases and things that are impacting our households, our communities, and be aware of it and stay aware of it.
Yeah, I want to go back to Danielle Pierre's question, only in this sense that the testing, we talked about the testing. Could you, in a primary care visit, say to your primary care doctor, I want to be tested for that? Or should you?
Well, I think that you can. It's a matter of whether or not it's covered by insurance. I'm not sure how that would work, to be very honest with you, but I definitely think it's worth asking, especially if you notice any of the symptoms. And sometimes there's even a condition called MGUS, which is like a precursor for myeloma. It's smoldering myeloma, and I think it's important for people to be, at a minimum, aware of it and aware of the symptoms and signs, so that people can go into a doctor's office and ask questions. I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking questions at all.
Yeah, Kimberly, I wasn't going to mention this, but I see he's wrote in. My brother he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 2016. He says that it's almost impossible for your family physician to diagnose. He says from his experience, the only 100% way to get diagnosed is by having a bone marrow biopsy.
It's painful,
That is,
but it's important. Yeah. It's important to make sure that once you're diagnosed, to try to find a specialist. I know not all areas will have physicians that are specialists in the world of myeloma, but I think it's important to arm yourself with all of the information that you can. And that's why That's My Word MM is such a great campaign to be a part of. The website provides resources and information for myeloma patients and caregivers. So it's frustrating. And I'm hoping that with his brother being diagnosed with myeloma, that he's not only educating himself about the disease, but that he's also talking to others about it. I think that's really important.
it's my brother.
Oh, it's your brother?
My brother, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
wow.
as I said, I wasn't going to mention it, but he decided to write into the program, I see, and so I decided to share that. But it's, you know, having a bone marrow biopsy is not something we go to our doctor and say, "Can I have a bone marrow biopsy?"
No. Absolutely not. No. And typically it's ordered after there's been some other indicators. So it's definitely not something you just go in and request.
Yeah. And there's often stigma around discussing, like, and I think you've hit on this, serious health issues in our community. Again, just for emphasis sake, what advice would you give to people who are hesitant to address these conversations due to either fear or stigma?
I'm not quite sure why they would be concerned about stigma, but I think that educating the people around them, being a resource to the other people in the community, I feel like it's rewarding in a way, and it's important to share, so that whenever anyone else finds themselves in the same position, at least you're helping them. I don't know where that came from, where we seem to be impacted by something and then we shut down and don't want to share, or keep it really, really vague. There's really nothing wrong with, or embarrassing, or anything you should be ashamed of by being diagnosed with a cancer, especially a blood cancer. And so to me, it's like, talk about it. The more we talk about it, we end up not only helping others, we can help other people in our family. I think it's really, really important that we get rid of that whole, oh my goodness, we need to shut down and handle this internally. No, talk about it. You never know who might know someone else who can really help you. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and going back to family. How do you talk to a relative? See, like with my brother, for instance, you know, I check in, we'll talk, but we don't necessarily talk about his illness, right? I mean, he's been doing great for the most part. So we don't talk about it. How much should we be talking about it, Kimberly? And how do we talk about it? Because I pick up the phone, I call him, "Hey, did you see the Knick game last night?"
Right. I appreciate this question. I promise you, he loves the fact that you pick up the phone and ask him about the Knicks game, because I'm sure, like a lot of patients and caregivers, sometimes you don't want to focus on the cancer all the time. You just want to live a normal life. But I think it's important, as someone who is a relative of someone with myeloma, to be aware of the symptoms, be aware of some of the emotional things that you go through by knowing that you're dealing with it. So I think one of the tough parts about being a myeloma patient, and Lord knows it impacted my husband, is for the most part, you sometimes look very normal. And people have no real idea what's going on with you at home. They don't know about all of the side effects that are hurting you or making you feel uncomfortable, because quite often people just don't see you during those times. So I think it's then when patients and caregivers should be a little bit more vocal about what the experience entails, and people who care about them should definitely be like, hey, look, if you ever need me, I'm here. Whatever you need me to do, I'm here. If you want to talk about your disease, I'm here. If you want to talk about the game, I'm here. So I think that it's definitely a way to balance it out, and it's important to just make sure you're there for each other. I'm so grateful you brought that up. I think that's really, really important.
It's interesting too, because he and his name is Darren, as people can see.
Hi,
He is
Darren.
probably, and I've, in my 30 years of journalism, I've been able to not only cover but also meet and be around a lot of um, top flight athletes.
Mhm.
You know, your husband obviously was a top flight athlete. You have to be in the NFL. And Darren, now he didn't play pro sports, but he's probably one of the 10 best athletes I've ever
Mhm.
seen or met.
Mhm.
And so you think about athletes, and you think about how they take care of their bodies. And like you said, you look at them and you think, okay, they're they did everything right. They did the exercise. They played the
Mhm.
sport. Sport in itself is an exercise. Um, and then you get hit with something like this. So hearing your story says, to me, and maybe to others, it kind of says, okay, so this is how you need to deal with it, because we don't know how to deal with it.
So the tricky part about myeloma too, and all blood cancers, is there's no screening process. There's no blood cancer prevention. So unlike breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, where you're screened, you're talking about it for years before it possibly can happen, you just kind of get knocked upside the head with a blood cancer. And so that's why I think it's important to talk about it, to know what the symptoms are, even if they do seem benign and simple and could possibly be confused by being something else. Just knowing about it, at least if you go to your physician and you talk to them, you're like, hey, could it possibly be this? I think it's important to arm yourself with the knowledge. It really is.
Yeah, and obviously, and unfortunately, you lost Elijah, um, but it's not necessarily a death sentence, right?
Mm, mm-mm. Well, and that's the remarkable thing. And one of the first things I always make sure I tell anyone who is newly diagnosed, when Elijah was diagnosed in '05, there really weren't a lot of treatment options. And so to see how many advancements have been made in the disease over the years in terms of options for myeloma patients, if I'm not mistaken, I think a new treatment option was just announced a couple of days ago. It's incredible. And it also gives me a lot of hope that we're really close to a cure. I mean, there's a lot of attention on myeloma. And I just think that the more and more we push, the more and more that we get involved with clinical trials, which, in our community, a lot of people don't have access to them. A lot of people don't participate in them. But if anyone is given the opportunity, I definitely encourage them to consider it. It's the only way we're going to be a part of the change. It's the only way that we're going to be a part of the cure, is to be involved in the conversations, to have our blood and things researched in order to figure out what's going on. Why is myeloma impacting us the way that it is? But to also be aware of the fact that having access to treatment options is really, really important. Having the resources available, we have to have the same opportunities as other races. White people get myeloma, but they have a lot more access and tend to do better with it. Although African Americans, would have better outcomes if they had the same access to those same resources. And so those are the things that I think are important and that we're trying to figure out and work through in order to make sure that myeloma improves in our community as well.
Yeah, and finally, what resources or support networks would you recommend?
I definitely encourage people to check out That's My Word MM to learn about all the resources, to learn about ways to get involved with the myeloma community. So you get information. You to me, that's like the most important thing. Awareness about myeloma is the biggest starting point. And so when you visit the website, you'll get all the information that you need. You'll hear from voices that are raising awareness in our community, and they'll teach you how to do the same. And you can make your multiple myeloma promise and how to get involved and make a difference in this space.
Yeah, and Kimberly, Darren also says that from his experience, if you are a Black male and you are anemic, then you should definitely get checked for myeloma.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Anemia plays a role, huh?
It can definitely be a symptom for sure.
Wow.
But
Wow.
again, that's something that's so benign. Like, a lot
Yeah.
of us go to the doctor and it's like, oh, just take some vitamin D or something. It can be dismissed as being something very, very simple, but it could also be something very serious.
Yeah. Well, Kimberly Alexander, we certainly appreciate you sharing your story with the Black press today. This is it's inspiring, and it gives us some hope, and in a time when we all need some hope. So thanks so much,
Absolutely.
Kimberly.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you again next week. Appreciate you.